Okay, so my presentation today is to report back on Resilient Regions, which is a unit that's been run in partnership with Murdoch University and Green Skills for at least the last decade. So every December we bring down to Denmark 20 to 30 Murdoch students and explore concepts of resilience, bioregionalism and sense of place through a whole range of field trips and case studies. So it's all about learning in a very immersive, intensive, experiential way for students. So just to give you a brief sort of outline of the core concepts that we use in the unit, it's very much based on a systems view of the world where everything is interconnected and linked. It's recognizing that complex systems are adaptive and that they can surprise us. And it's very much based on this idea of resilience, of how systems and entities can sort of weather shocks and adapt afterwards and sort of, spring back or bounce back. And so the unit's very much looking at how we can build the capacity for communities and ecosystems to adapt to future challenges. So briefly, what we're looking for when we're out in the field is aspects of resilience. So we're looking for diversity within systems. We're looking for modularity, where everything is not too tightly connected. We're looking for tight feedbacks and getting good information about systems in time. And we're looking for examples of innovation and creativity, of high levels of social capital and governance that's adaptive. So that's learning from experience and adapting in future. This idea of a bioregion is where we just define a region by its ecological characteristics, not necessarily political. And so what that looks like in practice is sort of creating our human activities based on a deep understanding, respect and care for the bioregion, and more self-sufficiency, decentralisation, a deep respect for and celebration of the Indigenous and the endemic. So really creating and enhancing a sense of place. But it's very much not xenophobic. It's not inward looking. It's still sort of, nationally and globally well connected. So how it works is that we sort of challenge the students to think of themselves as investigators, almost sustainability anthropologists. So they need to take this information that they're getting, observe, ask questions, interpret the information. It's very much about reflecting and learning in a collaborative way. And we build that collaboration in other ways together. We all stay in the cove down on Wilson Inlet, cooking, eating, working together. And one of the things we do is create this big diagram, which is a sort of shared understanding of the forces that are working for and against resilience in the region in a whole range of criteria. So in the rest of the presentation, whenever I've got a quote directly from the students from this diagram, that will be in italics. The rest of the information is sort of a summary of what students have observed over the last decade in Denmark. So we always start with Noongar history. We want to ground this entire thing in an understanding of Noongar Budja. And students, of course, have identified that a lack of a strong and large Indigenous population in Denmark has maybe prevented some sharing of traditional and sustainable land management knowledge. We generally have Larry Blight come and talk to us, and he gives a really incredible sort of dose of bioregional inspiration, showing us a whole range of bush tucker and medicine plants down by the river. And his stories are also of social and cultural resilience by Noongar people over the last 200 years. And those stories of resilience are also mirrored in the European history. So Denmark, over the last 120 years, has obviously faced some significant social, economic and ecological challenges and changes. And so the community of Denmark has had to demonstrate some resilience and some capacity to adapt to all of these changes. Excuse me. But there's also definitely some challenges for the future that students identify year after year. Our rapidly aging population, the sort of missing demographic of younger people, the challenges of managing rapid future population growth, economic challenges like local and global, and obviously we're facing one now with the global pandemic, and climate change and other ecological challenges are hugely significant up there. So hopefully with the focus of this 15-minute wonders this year being on ecological, this has already come up, and that it is no secret that we live in a remarkable place, that this entire Southwest land division is one of the world's 35 global biodiversity hotspots. But when you map the richness of species numbers at a more local level, we can see that right along that south coast is an area of incredible biological richness. So that Professor Steve Hopper from UWA says that to a biologist like me, this is the nearest thing to heaven on earth. And so our challenge becomes, how do we sustain this ecological wonderland and fit our human activities within it more effectively? And so one of our case studies, Gondwana Link, is an incredible example of this. It demonstrates lots of the characteristics of resilience. There's a real diversity of scales and approaches. There's modularity in that subsections of the link are sort of working independently but collaboratively. And it's an acknowledged global leader in ecological restoration. So one student who I think was a bit enamored with the project did say that it's bold and visionary. It embodies all of our unit theory and serves as a beacon of bottom-up collaborative and cooperative sustainability practice. So it demonstrates that large-scale change is possible, but that it requires small-scale cooperation and collaboration. And it is a notable thing of our region, even just around Denmark and immediate surrounds, the huge diversity of environmental organisations who are working at different scales, using different practices, but all with this shared goal of protecting and maintaining the incredible biodiversity that we have and restoring some of that into the future. So we also look at the tourism industry. Obviously, it's a major part of our local economy down here, and the ecotourism at a place like the Treetop Walk definitely shows some diversification of the local economy. And as a student pointed out, it's taken an environmental issue of the degradation of the Tingle Forest and turned that into an opportunity. So again, sort of demonstrating that resilience. We'd hope that for all the visitors who go there, that it is contributing to their bioregional and ecological understanding. But it's also a bit of a warning as well, maybe a bit of a canary in the coal mine for climate change in the region, because those tingle trees rely on a really high level of rainfall that, like all across the southwest, is rapidly declining. So we definitely look at the local economy as being a core part of what sustains a local community. And we do have a reasonably diversified local economy in Denmark. It is quite sort of bioregional in nature. We don't have a lot of multinational businesses here. And what Liz Jack, when she was with the Chamber of Commerce, called, micro businesses. So high rates of self-employment, many creative jobs, and many multi-skilled people. So what's come out is that perhaps we need more collaboration and more interaction for survival of all of these micro businesses in a rapidly changing business environment. So the Denmark Tip Shop obviously is an amazing example of a model social enterprise. So, it's providing that social benefit in terms of employment opportunities for quite a number of people, but doing that by meeting an ecological outcome as well, by diverting a huge amount of waste from landfill and really highlighting opportunities to do much more with waste in the future. When it comes to our local food system, we explore that quite a bit, and we do see some diversity in terms of the number of local producers and backyard growers, but basically the vast amount of food in Denmark is still purchased through supermarkets, and we rely on those centralised systems of distribution, which we obviously faced in those early days of the coronavirus and all of the panic buying around food. So there does seem to be a bit more that could be done within the local food system to create that really bioregional, more decentralised approach. So we go and visit some producers, and I've just pulled out one that we visit here, which is Murray and Kathy's Biodynamic Lamb Farm, a wonderful example of restorative and regenerative agriculture. And the students really get this strong sense that a model like this can be sustained in the long term, because it's working within the carrying capacity of the land, potentially at the expense of income, and using, quite a small scale business model where he's selling direct to the consumer. We visit Mumbaki Winery as well, which is always a bit of a hit with the students, and another great example of a small is beautiful business in action, of quite a determined attempt by the business owners to keep it small and manageable, and that their small vineyard is set within an area of significant ecological regeneration with endemic species, and their wetland is their physical indicator of the health of the entire system. So we have the state's only genuinely community-owned energy project with the Denmark Community Wind Farm. So, we're a leader there as well. And this obviously is an incredible diversification of local energy sources and of the local economy as well through the community ownership model. And it really highlights the potential for the Great Southern region to be a future leader, even an exporter of renewable energy into the future. Denmark is well known as a creative and town with a flourishing arts sector, and what we see is that creativity and innovation, I think, spreads out beyond just the arts, that many people are experimenting with different approaches because of this sort of hive of creativity. And it becomes a really important way of building social capital, building that trust and collaboration between people. It's also really interesting to see how many artists, I think, in the Denmark region are very much relating to the natural environment. They're expressing a sense of place, and they're expressing their connection to the bioregion. Denmark has a huge number of community organisations, and this is one of the key indicators of, you know, strong social capital. So all of these groups who are, you know, gatherings of people who are working together to create community activity, to, you know, do something positive for the community. All of this is a really important marker of resilience in Denmark. So housing is obviously a, you know, crucial aspect for all of us, and, you know, there's the sort of social dimensions of housing, but also the environmental dimensions of housing. And we do have some obvious leadership and innovation, and Deco housing is the most recent example of that. But I think it's fair to say that the majority of the housing in Denmark is probably not very climate sensitive or energy efficient, and that socially there probably is a limited diversity of options, limited rentals. You know, it's difficult at the cheaper end of the market for many people to get into the Denmark housing market. So, you know, we have to ask what we need to do there to make that housing stock fit for the future. So just to sort of finish up, we're showing them a huge amount of the good news stories in Denmark, but also sort of encouraging them to identify where the gaps are. And sustainable transport is obviously one of them. We are a very car dependent town with limited alternatives. As I just mentioned, there's that suggestion that we need to future-proof our housing, that our climate is only going to change into the future, that we, you know, are facing shortages of water, and, you know, we want to reduce our energy consumption. So we need to think about how we can design new housing around that. There also seems to be a lot more opportunities to create a more circular economy. So how can we see waste as just the potential for a new resource, not necessarily just something to landfill? And always a desire, need to create a more diverse economy and more job opportunities. And given the biodiversity hotspot that we live in, there seem to be enormous opportunities for an economy that's based on bioregionalism and ecological restoration. But in summary, I just wanted to leave with this quote from one student, that it is the individuals that make up the system in the Denmark bioregion that enhance its overall resilience. Throughout the field trip, there were enough examples of educated people with a heightened awareness of what it takes to be sustainable, that throughout this transition towards a future with limited non-renewable energy sources and climate change, this bioregion will be able to cope far better than many others. So as an experience, this unit has been an amazing thing to be a part of. It provides incredible sort of practical sustainability inspiration. It gives students reasons to hope and be optimistic, which can be a bit lacking when you're studying sustainability in our world currently. It provides this connection to nature for mainly students from the city that you know, they just find incredibly enriching and rewarding. And it really builds community in an age of disconnection. So we are hoping that we can continue this unit for many years into the future and continue to investigate sustainability and resilience here in Denmark. Thanks for having me.